Welcome to one of the most disturbing cases recorded in the history of Louisiana. Before we begin, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact time you're listening to this narration. The year was 1858, when Judge Thaddeus Whitmore's Magnolia Hill plantation outside Baton Rouge stood as a symbol of antebellum prosperity. On July 14th, the household awoke to find 3 people missing: the judge's daughter Camille, her personal slave Delia, and the overseer Mr. Blackwood. The Baton Rouge Gazette reported the disappearance with restraint, but what investigators discovered in the hidden chamber beneath the wine cellar would disturb even the most hardened souls of the South. A leather journal, found in 1934 during renovations, revealed clues to their fate, evidence so shocking that authorities sealed the records for nearly a century. Judge Whitmore had risen to prominence through a combination of shrewd land acquisitions and an appointment to the circuit court in 1843. His reputation captured in a letter from plantation owner Edward Beaumont to his brother in 1850, which read, "Whitmore dispenses justice with the cold precision of a surgeon's blade, feared by many, respected by all." Parish records indicate Magnolia Hill encompassed over 3,000 acres of prime sugarcane fields, stretching from the Mississippi's fertile banks inward, its great house standing 3 stories tall, with 14 Doric columns supporting a veranda that wrapped around the entirety of the structure, surrounded by formal gardens that, according to visitors' accounts, rivaled those of the finest European estates. The Louisiana Society Register of 1857 described his daughter Camille as possessing a quiet dignity and ethereal beauty that has made her the most sought-after debutante in Baton Rouge Parish. Despite, or perhaps because of, an intellectual disposition unusual in one so young and fair. Auction records from Charleston dated the 12th of May 1855 document the acquisition of one female Negro named Delia, age approximately 20, literate, trained in household management and personal attendance, unusually well-spoken and mannered, for the substantial sum of $1,800, nearly twice the typical price for a household slave, with the notation that she was particularly suitable as a lady's personal servant, having been raised in close proximity to her previous mistress and educated alongside her. In the winter months of 1857 leading into the fateful spring of 1858, a troubling transformation began to manifest in the behavior of Judge Thaddeus Whitmore. Documented in the personal journal of neighboring plantation owner Colonel James Harrington, who noted after a December soiree that our esteemed judge appeared distracted to the point of discourtesy, abandoning conversations mid-sentence to stare fixedly at his daughter across the ballroom with an expression I can only describe as suspicious. This observation was echoed in no fewer than 3 separate accounts from prominent Baton Rouge families, with Madame Josephine Beaumont writing to her cousin that the judge's peculiar manner has become the subject of whispered concern. More alarming evidence emerged during the subsequent investigation, when the household cook, Esther, provided testimony recorded by Sheriff William Montgomery, stating, "I heard the master and Miss Camille arguing fierce-like near every evening, him saying things like, 'I won't tolerate such impropriety under my roof,' and her crying something terrible afterward." The plantation's meticulously maintained logbooks, preserved in the Louisiana Historical Society archives, reveal an unusual entry dated the 23rd of February 1858 in Mr. Ryn Blackwood's precise handwriting. Reassignment of house slave Delia to laundry quarters effective immediately due to inappropriate familiarity with household members, followed by a notation in different ink. Reassignment countermanded by Miss Whitmore with judge's approval. Perhaps most revealing was a letter discovered among the judge's personal correspondence from his sister Mrs. Adelaide Whitmore, Beauchamp of New Orleans, dated the 10th of March, 1858, expressing alarm at what she had witnessed during her recent visit. "I must speak plainly, brother, about my concerns regarding Camille's excessive attachment to that slave girl. The manner in which they whisper together, the way Camille insists the girl attend her at all hours, it is unseemly and has not escaped the notice of others. Mr. Blackwood was quite right to attempt some separation between them, and your overruling him in this matter strikes me as uncharacteristically indulgent. I fear you may be blind to what is developing before your very eyes. The events of July 13th, 1858, the day before the disappearances were discovered, have been reconstructed through testimony collected from household servants during Sheriff Montgomery's initial investigation. Their accounts preserved in the parish records. Henrietta, the head housekeeper, reported that Miss Camille barely touched her breakfast and spent the morning hours locked in her room, emerging only when her father demanded her presence in his study around 11 o'clock. The laundress observed that Delia was sent to fetch fresh linens for Miss Camille's room 3 separate times that day, unusual even for the mistress's exacting standards. Most significantly, the judge's personal diary, recovered from his desk after the disappearances, contains a troubling entry dated July 13th. Have made a discovery today of such disturbing implications that I can scarcely commit it to paper. The letter hidden beneath C's jewelry box confirms my worst suspicions. Immediate action required to prevent scandal that would destroy us all. That evening, a dinner party was held at Magnolia Hill, with 12 of Baton Rouge's most prominent families in attendance. Mrs. Eleanor Livingston, seated across from Camille at dinner, later told investigators that the poor girl appeared positively haunted, her face pale as death, her hands trembling so violently she could scarcely hold her silverware, and her eyes constantly darting toward the doorway as if expecting some dreadful apparition to appear. Several guests noted the unusual attentiveness of Mr. Rallin. Nathaniel Blackwood, who, despite his position as overseer, had been invited to dine with the party, an unprecedented breach of social custom that sparked considerable gossip. Mrs. Livingston's account continues. Mr. Blackwood hardly touched his plate, so intent was his gaze upon Miss Whitmore. There was something predatory in his observation that chilled me, though the judge seemed oblivious to it. The final documented sighting of any of the soon-to-be missing persons came from 12-year-old stable boy Thomas, who reported to investigators that, long after the guests had gone and the house lights extinguished, I saw Mr. Blackwood with a lantern, moving about the grounds toward the back of the house, acting like he was searching for something or someone, checking inside buildings and stopping to listen every few steps. Sheriff William Montgomery's meticulous documentation, preserved in the Baton Rouge Parish Records Office, reveals that upon receiving Judge Whitmore's frantic message at 8:17 a.m. on July 14th, he assembled a search party comprising 14 deputies and 27 civilian volunteers, the largest such mobilization in parish memory. The handwritten accounts of neighboring plantation owners who joined the search paint a vivid picture of growing desperation as the day progressed, with Colonel Harrington writing that we divided into 4 groups to methodically cover the sugarcane fields, the cypress swamps to the east, the river road heading north, and the wooded areas surrounding the property. The July heat so oppressive that 2 men collapsed from exhaustion before midday. Particularly noteworthy is the statement provided by Jeremiah Wilson, the region's most respected bloodhound handler, who recounted how his 3 dogs followed a strong scent trail from the back entrance of the main house, across the formal gardens, through a small stand of magnolias, and down to the Mississippi riverbank approximately 1/2 mile south of the plantation's dock, where the scent disappeared entirely, suggesting either a water crossing or a deliberate attempt to obscure the trail with river water. The Baton Rouge Gazette's evening edition on July 14th reported the disappearances with remarkable restraint, noting only that the esteemed Judge Whitmore's household has been visited by misfortune with the unexplained absence of his daughter, a female house servant, and the plantation overseer. Foul play is not suspected at this time, though concerns of a possible river accident have been expressed given the proximity of the property to the Mississippi and recent sightings of unusually aggressive alligators in the area. By the following morning, however, the newspaper's tone had shifted subtly, introducing the possibility that Miss Whitmore may have been abducted by the missing slave, with the overseer's pursuit leading to some manner of confrontation, a theory that gained traction despite the judge's vehement objections. Any hope that the missing persons had simply fled to New Orleans was extinguished by a telegram received on July 16th from the judge's brother-in-law, prominent shipping merchant Bartholomew Beauchamp, stating, "Have personally inspected passenger manifests of all vessels docked past 3 days stop. No individuals matching your descriptions observed by captains or crew stop. Will continue inquiries and alert authorities stop." The pivotal discovery that transformed the search for the missing occurred on July 21st, 1 week after the disappearances, when 10-year-old slave child Josiah, sent to retrieve a bottle of the judge's prized Madeira from the wine cellar, accidentally dislodged an ornamental grape cluster carved into the far wall. According to the boy's testimony, transcribed by Sheriff Montgomery's deputy, "The wall just opened up, sir, like in a ghost story. And I was so frightened I ran straight back upstairs, screaming that the devil lived beneath the house." Sheriff Montgomery's official report, filed with the parish records and sealed until 1934, documents the hidden chamber with dispassionate precision. The concealed room measures approximately 12 feet by 14 feet, accessed via a cleverly disguised door activated by a spring mechanism. Contents include a narrow bed with linens recently used, a small writing desk with chair, 3 oil lamps, a trunk containing women's clothing identified as belonging to Miss Whitmore, garments confirmed as the property of the slave, Delia, a man's coat and hat recognized as Mr. Blackwood's, and most disturbingly, evidence of violence in the form of substantial bloodstains on the western wall and floor beneath, with blood spatter patterns suggesting a wound inflicted with considerable force. The report continues, noting the discovery of a leather-bound journal with entries in the slave Delia's hand. Several letters exchanged between Miss Whitmore and Delia revealing a relationship of unusual intimacy, and a half-completed letter from Blackwood to the judge, its contents suggesting knowledge of improper activities. The psychological impact of these discoveries on Judge Whitmore was captured in a letter sent by neighbor Dr. Lawrence Beaufort to a colleague. "I was present when Thaddeus was shown the hidden chamber. The man who emerged from that cellar was utterly transformed by grief. His face ashen, hands trembling, eyes holding a hollow look I have previously observed only in soldiers who have witnessed the most horrific battlefield carnage. Whatever he saw in that room has broken something fundamental within him." In the weeks following the discovery of the hidden chamber, Judge Whitmore's psychological deterioration manifested with alarming rapidity, documented through the reluctant testimonies of household servants gathered by Dr. Beaufort, who noted in his medical journal that the judge paces the halls at night, muttering to himself and addressing his absent daughter as if she stood before him, his speech alternating between tender pleas for her return and vitriolic condemnations of her betrayal. Parish auction records reveal a disturbing pattern beginning in August 1858, when Whitmore commenced selling his slaves at an unprecedented rate, divesting himself of 37 individuals in a single month, many at prices well below market value, with the auctioneer's notation that the seller appears indifferent to financial considerations, demanding only immediate removal of all purchased persons from his property. The deterioration of his mental faculties is most clinically documented in the private diary of Dr. James Thornton, the Whitmore family physician for over 2 decades, who recorded on September 3rd, "Attended Judge W again tonight during episode of extreme agitation. Patient exhibits classical symptoms of paranoid delirium, insisting that household slaves are engaged in elaborate conspiracy, just as the others did, requiring physical restraint when he attempted to interrogate kitchen staff at pistol point." The gravity of the situation prompted his sister, Adelaide, to dispatch a desperate letter on September 17th, discovered among the judge's effects after his death, imploring, "I beg you, brother, come to New Orleans immediately, where discretion can be maintained while you undertake the rest cure at Dr. Milburn's sanitarium. Your position, our family name, and indeed your very sanity depend upon removing yourself from that plantation and its poisonous memories." This plea went unheeded, as evidenced by her subsequent correspondence, expressing despair at his obstinate refusal to accept assistance. The final public acknowledgement of Whitmore's collapse came on October 10, 1858, when court records document his formal resignation from the circuit court judgeship, citing only personal tragedy of such magnitude as to render me temporarily incapable of discharging my duties with the clarity of mind justice demands. Thus, ending a distinguished legal career spanning 15 years and marking the beginning of his complete withdrawal from society. February 1859 marked a haunting new chapter in the Magnolia Hill mystery when the first of 5 anonymous letters arrived for Judge Whitmore, their existence known only because devoted housekeeper Martha Williams, increasingly concerned for her master's deteriorating state, secretly preserved the correspondence, after observing him burning the first 2 missives in the library fireplace. These letters, written on fine cream stationery with a distinctive floral watermark later traced to a stationer in the French Quarter, contained passages of deliberately obscured meaning. With the 3rd letter, dated March 7th, beginning, "The sins of the father cannot wash away in river water. Nor can blood be hidden forever beneath whitewashed reputations. 3 souls have escaped your dominion, though perhaps not in the manner you believe." The postmaster's meticulous records, consulted during the reopened investigation of 1860, confirmed all 5 letters originated from New Orleans, specifically the postal station on Rue Royale, frequented primarily by the city's elite residents and visitors. Sheriff Montgomery's frustration surfaces clearly in his private investigation notes, where he wrote, "Judge Whitmore acknowledges receipt of correspondence pertaining to the disappearances, but refuses to surrender these letters for official examination, claiming their contents are personal slander rather than substantive evidence. His obstruction suggesting either protection of his family's reputation or, more troublingly, fear of what deeper investigation might reveal." The letters themselves remained hidden until Martha Williams' death in 1882, when her daughter discovered them carefully wrapped in oilcloth inside her mother's Bible and donated them to the Parish Historical Society with the notation, "Mama said these papers explain what really happened at Magnolia Hill and should be preserved for truth's sake." Modern analysis performed by linguistics professor Dr. Eleanor Simmons in 1967 determined that the handwriting exhibits characteristics consistent with someone educated in the distinctive penmanship style taught at female academies of the northeastern United States during the penmanship steam use. 1840 seconds, with certain letter formations suggesting the writer later adapted to Southern scriptural conventions, likely through extended residence in the region. The text itself employs vocabulary and grammatical structures indicative of substantial formal education, almost certainly placing the author among the educated female elite rather than the general populace. Baton Rouge Port Authority records from April through September 1859 document Judge Whitmore's increasingly frequent steamboat journeys to New Orleans, with customs declarations citing business and legal consultations as his purpose for travel, despite his official resignation from the bench months earlier. The Street Charles Hotel Register reveals he maintained a consistent pattern of 3-night stays, occurring precisely when the newly opened Crescent Theater featured performances by a company recently arrived from Philadelphia, particularly on evenings when their production of Twelfth Night showcased a young actress billed as Miss Charlotte Winters in the role of Viola. Theater playbills preserved in the New Orleans Historical Society collection describe this Miss Winters as a luminous new talent of refined bearing and delicate beauty, whose portrayal of Shakespeare's heroine captures both vulnerability and hidden strength. The physical resemblance between this actress and the missing Camille Whitmore was apparently striking enough that New Orleans Picayune Society columnist Josephine Dubois noted in her private correspondence. The new actress causing such a sensation bears an uncanny likeness to the unfortunate Whitmore girl who vanished last summer. One wonders if the bereaved judge has noticed this painful coincidence during his theatrical places. Patronage. That he had indeed noticed is evidenced by a New Orleans police report dated June 17, 1859, detailing an incident wherein a distinguished gentleman from Baton Rouge, identified as former Judge T. Whitmore, created a considerable disturbance at the Crescent Theater by attempting to access the backstage areas without authorization following the evening performance, shouting demands to speak with Miss Winters and making accusations of a personal nature before being forcibly removed from the premises. Further connection appears in the unpublished notebooks of journalist Thomas Blackwell, discovered among his effects after his death in 1870, which contain the intriguing observation, "For the third consecutive night," observed Judge W., seated alone in the rear of the theater box, his attention fixed not on the performance but exclusively on Miss Winters. His expression, one of such haunted intensity that several patrons seated nearby requested relocation to different sections, clearly disturbed by the spectacle of grief or madness he presented. The Magnolia Hill case transformed from mysterious disappearance to suspected murder on the 12th of March 1860, when seasonal flooding along Bayou Manchac uncovered a partial human skeleton entangled in the exposed roots of a fallen cypress approximately 3 miles downstream from the plantation. Parish Coroner Dr. Frederick Holcomb's examination notes, preserved in the Louisiana State Archives, state that the remains, while significantly degraded by water exposure and predation, can be determined to belong to a Caucasian male of substantial height and robust build, approximately 30 to 40 years of age, with evidence of blunt force trauma to the occipital region of the skull consistent with a single powerful blow from behind, characteristics broadly consistent with the missing overseer Nathaniel Blackwood. The discovery prompted Sheriff Montgomery to officially reopen the investigation, focusing particular scrutiny on Judge Whitmore, whose alibi for the night of the disappearances had been provided solely by his brother-in-law Bartholomew Beauchamp, who claimed the judge had been engaged in legal discussions in his study until well past midnight. This account was dramatically contradicted by testimony from an elderly slave named Moses, whose statement had been sealed with the original case files, but was now entered into evidence. "I was tending the roses near the judge's study window that evening when I heard terrible shouting inside. The master's voice raised like thunder about disgrace and abomination, and then him rushing out toward the wine cellar carrying his walking stick raised up like a weapon, and that was near 10 o'clock, not midnight like they've been saying." Sheriff Montgomery's presentation to the grand jury, reconstructed from court records, methodically outlined his theory that the judge discovered an improper relationship, confronted the parties in the hidden chamber, and in a moment of rage struck Blackwood with his walking stick, resulting in fatal injury, followed by disposal of the body in the bayou with the forced assistance of his daughter and the slave Delia, who subsequently fled or were themselves dispatched to ensure their silence. Despite the sheriff's evident conviction, the grand jury transcript reveals the 12 men deliberated for less than 3 hours before declining to indict, with the foreman's statement noting, "While suspicious circumstances certainly exist, the evidence presented remains entirely circumstantial, with no witnesses to any alleged crime and insufficient physical evidence to warrant the extraordinary step of indicting a man of Judge Whitmore's standing in our community." The outbreak of civil war in April 1861 abruptly suspended all investigation into the Magnolia Hill mystery, as Sheriff Montgomery and most able-bodied men in the parish joined Confederate regiments, with parish records noting the case was officially suspended indefinitely due to wartime exigencies. Confederate military dispatches from July 1862 document the requisitioning of Magnolia Hill's main house as a field hospital following the Battle of Baton Rouge, with Surgeon Major Caleb Woodward reporting that the property's owner, a reclusive former judge, has retreated to the overseer's cottage, refusing all interaction with staff or wounded, insisting only that the wine cellar remain locked and unused for any purpose. The plantation's strategic location near the Mississippi made it the subject of repeated skirmishes, and by late 1863, Union forces had occupied the property, with Captain William Sheffield's report noting the once grand estate was already showing significant neglect, suggesting decline had commenced well before wartime privations. A more personal account appears in the diary of Private Josiah Merriweather, discovered after his death at Petersburg in 1865, describing his exploration of the main house. While removing wall panels in search of valuables, discovered a concealed space containing dozens of charcoal sketches, disturbing images of a young woman and female slave in intimate poses, some bearing messages of devotion and references to our sanctuary beneath. The drawings exhibit considerable skill, but radiate an unsettling obsession. Lieutenant Brooks ordered them burned as morally objectionable, though I secretly preserved one. The war's conclusion in 1865 found Magnolia Hill in near collapse, with Friedman's Bureau reports describing fields long untended, slave quarters abandoned, and the main house suffering severe fire damage. Parish tax records from 1866 reclassify the property from plantation estate to residential farmland, with a 78% reduction in assessed value, while Dr. Thornton's patient logs mention attending the now elderly and half-mad Judge Whitmore, who lives alone amidst decaying remnants of former grandeur, still muttering about betrayal and blood, as if events of 8 years past occurred yesterday. Parish records from East Baton Rouge document Judge Thaddeus Whitmore's death on the 23rd of November 1867, with the official cause listed as consumption exacerbated by melancholia, though Dr. Thornton's private correspondence suggests the man simply surrendered his will to live after years of bearing some terrible hidden burden. The death certificate bears the signature of Father Michael Devereaux of Tetling, St. Joseph's Catholic Church, who, despite Whitmore having no previous Catholic affiliation, was summoned at the judge's explicit request during his final hours. What transpired in that final meeting remained sealed behind the sanctity of confession, though courthouse records contain an unusual notation that Father Devereaux requested an immediate private audience with Acting Sheriff Lawrence Pettigrew mere hours after pronouncing last rites, with the clerk observing that the priest appeared visibly shaken, his complexion ashen as though having witnessed something beyond worldly comprehension. When formally questioned during the brief reopening of the investigation in 1868, Father Devereaux steadfastly maintained confessional privilege, stating only that Judge Whitmore died reconciled with God, having unburdened his soul of matters weighing heavily upon his conscience. The true nature of this deathbed confession remained hidden until 1952, when renovations at the St. Joseph's Rectory uncovered Father Devereaux's personal journal sealed within a wall cavity, its pages containing entries written in a rudimentary substitution cipher that, once decoded by linguistics professor Dr. Samuel Harrington, revealed the cryptic notation. The 23rd of November, 1867, attended Judge W. in extremis. May God have mercy on his tortured soul. The burden he revealed, the sin of wrath that destroyed 3 souls and condemned his own, exceeds anything encountered in my 20 years of ministry. The truth of Magnolia Hill is more terrible than the rumors suggest. Further evidence of the confession's gravity appears in church records for the following Sunday, November 25, when the parish register notes Father Devereaux's unprecedented request for special prayers to be offered for the victims of violent passions and for those whose jealousy has led them to acts of mortal sin. Language so specific that elderly parishioners reportedly exchanged knowing glances, the whispered name Whitmore passing among the congregation like a restless spirit seeking acknowledgement. The faded grandeur of Magnolia Hill passed through several owners after Judge Whitmore's death until 1934, when New Orleans banker Harrison Montgomery purchased the dilapidated property with plans to restore it as a summer residence, hiring the prestigious architectural firm of Blanchard & Sons to oversee the renovation. Firm records, preserved in Louisiana's Architectural Heritage Collection, document the unexpected discovery made on June 17th, when workers removing damaged plaster in what had been Camille's bedroom uncovered a small cavity behind the fireplace mantel, described in project manager Robert Blanchard's site notes as not a structural void or accidental gap, but rather a space deliberately constructed to conceal contents, with evidence of skilled craftsmanship in creating a seamless hiding place invisible to casual inspection. Within this cavity, wrapped in oilcloth and remarkably preserved, lay a leather-bound journal alongside a small ivory cameo portrait of two young women, one white and one black, their heads inclined toward each other with expressions of unmistakable intimacy. The journal, subjected to analysis by Dr. Marcus Winters of Tulane University, was determined through handwriting comparison with plantation records to be unquestionably the work of the slave woman known as Delia, the penmanship revealing formal education far exceeding what was typically permitted for enslaved persons. The earliest entries, dating from 1855, shortly after her arrival at Magnolia Hill, document her previous life. Miss Eleanor taught me letters alongside her lessons from age 6, keeping our sessions secret from her father, who would have sold me immediately had he known. She called me her sister in all but blood and skin. Subsequent pages reveal the gradual development of her relationship with Camille Whitmore, initially describing a mistress kinder than most, who speaks to me as a person rather than property, evolving into entries of increasing emotional intensity such as, C. touched my hand today while no one watched, her fingers lingering longer than propriety allows, and I felt a dangerous hope awakening. Interwoven with these confessions are disturbing references to Nathaniel Blackwood, the overseer. He watches me with hungry eyes when the judge isn't present, cornering me in hallways to whisper vile propositions. He swears he will have me one way or another, by permission or by force, and I believe him capable of the latter. Delia's journal, the most revealing artifact in the Magnolia Hill mystery, chronicles the evolution of her relationship with Camille Whitmore through entries spanning from December 1855 to July 1858. With historian Dr. Eleanor Simmons noting that the handwriting transforms alongside the emotional content, beginning with formal, cautious script and gradually becoming more fluid and intimate as trust deepens. Early entries describe Camille lending Delia books from her father's library, followed by clandestine reading lessons in the garden gazebo, with Delia writing, "Miss Camille says my mind is too fine to be left uncultivated. Though we must be careful, her father would never approve of our friendship, much less her teaching me poetry." By summer 1856, the journal documents their discovery of the hidden chamber. C showed me the most extraordinary secret today, a room beneath the house that her grandfather built during construction, accessed through the wine cellar wall. She says she found it as a child playing hide-and-seek with her cousins, but never revealed it to anyone until now, calling it our sanctuary from the world's eyes. The entries from early 1857 mark a profound shift, with Delia confessing, "What exists between us has no name I dare write. Even in these private pages, she kissed me today in our hidden room, and the world tilted beneath my feet." We are committing an unforgivable transgression, not merely of law, but of nature as society defines it, yet nothing has ever felt more natural or true. The journal details their increasing boldness, establishing a routine of meeting in the hidden chamber 3 nights weekly, until a devastating entry dated the 12th of May 1858. "Disaster has found us. Blackwood followed C to our meeting place and discovered everything. He has threatened to tell the judge unless we submit to his demands. For C, financial extortion. For me, demands too vile to record. He gave us 1 week to decide." The final dated entry, the 13th of July 1858, reveals their desperate plan. "We can neither submit nor continue this way. C has contacted Mr. Fellows in New Orleans, known for assisting those seeking freedom in the North. We leave tomorrow night with his help. Blackwood suspects nothing of our true intentions, believing we will meet to surrender to his demands." The scattered pieces of the Magnolia Hill mystery remained disconnected until 1965, when Tulane University historian Dr. Josephine Lafayette published her groundbreaking analysis, Identities Transformed: Escape and Reinvention in Antebellum Louisiana, which methodically connected previously disjointed evidence spanning decades and multiple states. Her research uncovered a receipt from Madame Fontaine's dress shop in Baton Rouge dated July 10, 1858, to 3 days before the disappearances. showing Nathaniel Blackwood's purchase of 2 traveling ensembles suitable for ladies of quality. An unusual transaction explained by a handwritten note on the reverse. Mr. B. states items are gifts for relations in New Orleans. This evidence aligned with previously overlooked Underground Railroad conductor records preserved in the Ohio Historical Society archives, where Quaker abolitionist Samuel Thorndale documented assisting 2 women from Louisiana plantations, one fair-skinned enough to pass as white, the other clearly of African descent, though similarly educated, accompanied by a white man claiming to be the husband of the former, all 3 fleeing some unspecified danger rather than merely seeking general freedom. The investigation's most significant breakthrough came with the discovery of performance contracts in the Crescent Theater archives, where a document dated March 1859 engaged Nathan Black as stage manager, with provisions for his wife Cora Black as leading actress and her sister-in-law Delilah Freeman as costumer, roles they maintained through 4 theatrical seasons before relocating to Philadelphia in 1863, as confirmed by city tax records. Dr. Lafayette's examination of Philadelphia court documents revealed a successful petition filed in 1865 by Delilah Freeman, free woman of color, for legal recognition of her status. Supported by affidavits from Nathan and Cora Black, theatrical professionals of good standing, effectively securing her freedom in post-emancipation America. The final chapter of their reinvented lives appears in Philadelphia's Laurel Hill Cemetery records, documenting the deaths of Nathan Black in January 1882, his wife Cora in March of the same year, and Delilah Freeman in June. All from tuberculosis and all buried within yards of one another, their headstones bearing the shared epitaph: beloved companions in life's journey, reunited in eternal peace, with Delilah's stone featuring the additional inscription, born in bondage, lived in freedom, died in dignity. The Magnolia Hill mystery has been reinterpreted across generations as new evidence emerged and social perspectives evolved, with contemporary analysis casting a more nuanced light on what was once dismissed as mere Southern scandal. Dr. Rebecca Thornton's exhaustive 1,987 examination of Judge Whitmore's recovered private diaries revealed cryptic entries suggesting he had indeed discovered the true nature of his daughter's relationship with Delia, writing on the 12th of July, 1858. The letter hidden beneath C's jewelry box confirms my darkest suspicions. Such unnatural devotion between mistress and slave violates all divine and human law. The following day's entry mentions arranging a meeting with Blackwood, followed by the ominous notation: he confirms my fears but proposes a solution so repugnant it borders on extortion. My daughter debased. My authority undermined. Blood may be the only answer to such perfidy. This discovery fundamentally shifted scholarly understanding of the case, suggesting Judge Whitmore confronted Blackwood not as a pursuer of fugitives, but as a participant in the tragic events. The most startling revelation came in 2003, when Louisiana State University forensic anthropologists conducted DNA analysis on the preserved Bayou skeleton, determining conclusively that the remains are not consistent with Nathaniel Blackwood's documented physical characteristics, but rather belong to an unidentified male of African descent, approximately 25 to 30 years of age. This finding prompted researchers to re-examine plantation records, identifying a missing male slave named Isaiah who disappeared the same night, suggesting he may have assisted the escape and become a victim of the judge's rage. The final piece of evidence emerged in 2010 when Philadelphia Historical Society archivist Martin Coopersmith discovered a daguerreotype labeled simply Theater Company 1865, showing 2 women and a man seated together in formal attire. Their features, though aged by time and hardship, unmistakably matching descriptions of Delia, Camille, and Blackwood. Forensic facial recognition confirmed with 91% certainty that these individuals were the missing trio from Magnolia Hill, living openly as theatrical professionals in Northern society. Modern historians now generally concur with Dr. Lafayette's assessment that the Magnolia Hill mystery represents not merely a forbidden relationship that crossed boundaries of race, class, and gender, but also a remarkable act of self-liberation in which three individuals rejected their prescribed social roles and, despite the violence and loss marking their departure, ultimately succeeded in creating new identities and relationships that would have been impossible within the rigid confines of their antebellum origins.